Welcome to the Big Biz Show. Taking care of business. You want fast-talking, hard-hitting discussions on business and finance? Maybe with a barroom slant and some really salty peanuts? We're not counting calories. We're counting cash. Before we get to the man with the financial plan, meet the money team. Costa, Mary, and Greg. Now, Captain Finance himself, Sully.
Hey, they're live from the Law 400 studios in sunny San Diego, California. Big Biz Show's on there. Great to have you along today. Where is Costa? I haven't seen Costa in a week.
I mean,
starting to get worried.
Vacay.
I'm thinking the word.
Vacay, baby.
Last time me and James were missing somebody, a musician, and we couldn't get a hold of him. Turned out he was in the pokey.
That's what I was.
You still can't get a hold of him.
They were on tour.
Sure.
James, what's that bass you're playing there? What's that little micro bass you got going there?
God, I love this. This is the new Taylor.
Hey.
Taylor guitars, of course. I am a very famous artist with the Taylor guitar. You've seen Bob Taylor on our show before, and of course,
Love Bob Taylor.
And now I'm exclusive on stage with Taylor guitars. Do you see this number over here?
Wow.
Equipment in here.
That is
Go to TaylorGuitars.com. We're going to be doing an event with Taylor Guitars coming up, and we'll describe it very shortly. But it has to do with handing out guitars and giving lessons for those military men and women who have experienced PTSD.
Love it.
Wow.
Where they take them through and they teach them a couple of songs, they give them a guitar, and it takes their mind off of everything. Isn't that
Totally.
fantastic? Good stuff.
Therapeutic.
We'll be doing that. Howie Font's with us, of course, the Crash Davis of the program. Have you been outside? Your spacious apartment there in New York City since May? Because I understand it's 109 degrees and 109% humidity right now.
You know what? We've had a pleasant 10 days or so. I'm sitting outside having dinner. It's a great time. Great July, and I'm knocking on wood. I don't want anything to change.
What's the latest for the rest of the year? Are we see summertime volatility or no? Are we going to see activity in the stock market? Because it seems like you talk about summer slowdowns. I don't see anything slowing down.
Yeah, there's been some news, I don't know if you've heard, that's kept the market churning. Some political developments, I think, have kept things going. And then the market is just hot with legitimate business activity. So, I mean, in previous shows, I talked about new IPOs. But what I've been harping on for a long time is this dichotomy between smaller companies and the very, very largest, the Mag 7, as they're now known. The group shifts every now and then, but that's coming down. So we actually, I don't know when taping is, but yesterday we saw our biggest drop since 2022. And that's because people are getting out of the big tech names and into the rest of the economy. And that's a good thing. It needs to rebound.
Now, is that just because they're going to their summer home in the Hamptons for a few months? They're getting back in? Because you talk about rebalancing portfolios all the time. And the Russell 2000 just rebalanced, about 6 weeks ago? And you saw a big change in the values of some stocks as a result of that. Are you talking about institutional investors kind of move their money over, or do you think this is a permanent thing for a while?
No, this is a cyclical thing. So we got to a point where 7 companies had a market cap equal to like everything else in the entire world combined. We saw Nvidia in that story, and it was just too much. So people are taking a little bit of money off the table. They're taking some of the tech money off the table and rebalancing portfolios and buying a little bit of everything else.
The prospect of 2% inflation anytime soon in real inflation numbers. You talked about that last time a little bit.
No. That's not.
It answered.
Look, it might come down nominally, but the Fed has said it's not going to wait for hitting its normal 2% target before it starts cutting. And if we cut, then the economy will get a little boost, but it's not going.
Are you even a little bit optimistic? I mean, I'm just looking for a little bit of silver lining.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense.
Howie Font, thanks, buddy. More Big Biz to come. Stand by. Loft 100 Studios, the Big Biz Show, and our affiliates and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general.
Given the nature of the company's profile and the lack of an active trading market for the securities, investing is highly speculative and carries a certain high degree of risk.
We profile selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stocks if we are speaking about interviewing or covering a public company who has paid compensation.
Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by contacting producer at sullyentgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We encourage our investors to invest carefully and read the investor information available at the websites on the
Securities and Exchange Commission at sec.gov and or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at www.finra.org.
I like it.
Hey, they're live from the Loft 100 Studios in sunny San Diego, California. Big Biz Show's on the air. Nationwide, coast to coast. Of course, thanks to our friends at Bloomberg, Vancero, and American Forces Network. We're also international, kids.
How about that?
So, Greg got an email a few weeks back, maybe a month ago.
Yes.
About a company called American Battery Technology Company. Stock symbol ABAT, and said we should interview this gentleman, Ryan Melsert. It's really next-gen battery recycling technology and a talk about metals. And I know that doesn't sound extremely exciting, but it is when you consider in terms of investing and in terms of market size and adoptability. You're talking billions of dollars here.
Yep.
I give you Ryan Melsert. Ryan, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Doing great. Good to see you again.
Hey, talk about top-down, Ryan. About what you guys are doing, because it really is tip of the spear in a number of levels here. And I want you to kind of take the same way you took last time and walk us through a little bit on how American Battery Technology is operating.
Yes, definitely happy to. Like we discussed, there are dozens of very large battery gigafactories under construction in the U.S. A lot of capacity being made for making electric vehicles. But in the U.S., there's close to zero capacity to actually make the metals and the refined components that go into those cells. So those huge multi-billion-dollar factories are importing close to 100% of their feed material. So that makes them very vulnerable for their own supply chain. They have to import that much material. It increases their costs having to import them from abroad. And it does increase the environmental impact, really having to move material very far like that. So to address that, we've developed two separate technologies. One is a new type of method to recycle batteries. So we take waste from the manufacturing processes, we take end-of-life material from vehicles, we put it through our internally developed process, and we can make 9 different products that we then sell directly back into the domestic battery industry. So most mining operations, you can make one product, maybe a second byproduct, but an end-of-life battery is essentially the perfect mine to make a brand new battery. So we can make every component needed to manufacture a brand new battery, all in the same place, and all in exactly the right ratios. So we commercialized our first recycling facility last fall. We have that running now and are selling commercial scale quantities of these recycled products back into the market.
Ryan, question for you. You talked about reliance on foreign resources. Let me go back to that just for 1 second. Before you came along, what was going to be the outcome? Because let's face it, it sounded like it was pretty dire. The minute there was a geopolitical issue, the minute the actual resources were of short supply, what would have happened, and how would that have affected everything from consumers all the way to corporations?
Exactly. As I mentioned, there are over 20 of these multi-billion-dollar battery factories in the U.S. that are running or under construction. There could have been a geopolitical factor, or even something like COVID lockdowns, where there's more of a physical restraint or constraint to importing materials. All of those factories would have essentially become stranded assets inoperable, who wouldn't have been able to run without access to their own feed material. So having that type of supply chain risk does make these companies very vulnerable. And that's why we can make just about every product needed to go back into the manufacturing of a brand new battery. We can do it domestically, and we're selling right back into the major US-based strategic customers now.
Ryan Melsert's his name, American Battery Technology Company, ABAT is their stock symbol. Mary, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, this claystone to lithium hydroxide manufacturing. Talk to us a little bit more. I mean, that's a mouthful. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned we have two business units. The first is that battery recycling. It's really important that once material is in the field, that we close the loop to essentially keep it there indefinitely. But separately, you have to fill that loop the first time. So there's a type of material in Nevada that's called a claystone material. It has very large amounts of lithium in it, but it's held in a form that's not very traditional. So up until now, no one's really been able to recover the lithium from it, manufacture into a battery-grade component, and to do so in an economic competitive fashion. So about 3 years ago, we actually came up with our own technology for how to do that at the very small bench scale. 2 years ago, we actually built a pilot plant to really show how this works. We ended up winning a government grant from the Department of Energy to help build that plant. And because that's been going well, we just won another Department of Energy grant last year for a $115 million project to now build a commercial scale refinery directly on our property right here in Nevada.
Hey, Ryan.
So as we move forward with construction, it's going to be one of the largest lithium refineries in the country.
Wow. Speaking of the U.S. Department of Energy, Secretary Jennifer, is it Grantham, I think her name is? I can't remember her last name. Visited you guys or hosted at your facility something pretty specific or significant. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely mentioned. So making battery-grade lithium from this claystone is very rare. It's something no one does at commercial scale. So when we demonstrated we could do it at our pilot plant, which was funded by Department of Energy, and also that we're moving forward with this commercial scale refinery. Within days of us putting that statement out publicly, Secretary Granholm reached out and her team and asked if they could come essentially tour our plant and see it happening, firsthand. So her and much of her team came a few weeks ago. They toured our facility. We actually showed her the feed material, how the process works, and how a lot of the product coming out. We mentioned we've also signed a strategic partnership agreement with BASF, so one of the largest customers of lithium materials in the U.S. So some of their leadership flew in as well to tour the plant, to meet Jennifer, to meet Secretary Granholm as well. And it was just really impactful to have the federal government there and also our largest customer right on site, really vouching that they're pleased with the type of product we're making and that we're moving forward to be producing that at commercial scale.
Hey, Ryan, so in as much as you can speak about it, what's next for you guys for the rest of the year, then going into 18 months, in your opinion?
So that pilot plant for making the lithium from claystone is now running. We're now going into commercial scale construction. So we've hired one of the premier construction companies in the world, Black & Veatch, who's helping to construct our commercial scale refinery now. So we'll be moving forward with that to make what will eventually be about a 30,000 ton per year lithium refinery right in central Nevada. And then on the battery recycling side, we have our commercial facility operational. We'll be adding shift counts as we go forward, increasing the ramp rate and throughput of that plant. And then there's some more value add technologies we'll be adding on over the next few months so we can make even more impactful material. There's just such a big supply-demand imbalance right now. Huge demand for these types of U.S.-made battery materials, and so few companies are able to make them.
Hey, Ryan, with the big contracts that are coming up, specifically the $115 million contract, are you in the position to pursue other contracts in the meantime?
Definitely, and that contract is from Department of Energy again, and is specifically to cover about half of the capital cost to build the refinery. But in addition to that, the next big one is we have many automakers who essentially want a contract to buy the product out of the plant. So those are long-term offtake agreements. We're sending material samples to all those prospective customers now. And having a multi-year offtake from a commercial plant is very impactful. And many of those customers also want to essentially have more skin in the game. So want to make this much more of a partnership and a relationship than just a simple offtake agreement.
Yeah, I got to say, I can't wait to see the addressable market when all the dust settles, so to speak. I mean, do you have even any idea at this point in the billions what it is just in the U.S.? Because it's got to be crazy.
And the point is we're growing into a void. There really is close to zero lithium made that's battery grade within the U.S. So it's very few competitors that are existing. In the handful of announced plants, some of them are making lower quality material, just technical grade. Some of them aren't able to make a lithium hydroxide material, just a lower quality product. So every time we talk to the very big customers, they just say it's rare for them to have a U.S. company they can actually source from. And they would much prefer to do that as opposed to most of the Asian companies they're sourcing from now.
His name is Ryan Melsert, CEO and Chief Technology Officer at American Battery Technology Company, ABAT, AmericanBatteryTechnology.com. Got to have you back soon, Ryan. Love to have you in studio. Big Biz Show, BigBizShow.com. We'll see you back in a minute. Studios in sunny San Diego, California. Big Biz Show's on the air. Good to have you along. 125 million TV homes strong. Nationwide, coast to coast, thanks to BizTV and Bloomberg Financiero, not to mention American Forces Network, or they call AFARTS, Armed Forces Radio Television Services. Today, 10:02, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Hey, is Costa still missing?
He's missing
still at large.
What's going on with him?
I don't know. I know at least we have Howie coming up in a second. Ram Makunda, by the way, founder and CEO of a company called IGC Pharmaceuticals. We got to this guy because a shareholder, I think, contacted Greg and said we should talk to these guys. These guys are spearheading a mission to take on Alzheimer's disease. And there is a malady called agitation in Alzheimer's disease. That IGC has a pretty novel approach to. Rob's been on the air with us before. Pretty interesting story, and I give you Ram Makunda, the CEO. Ram, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Sully. Thank you for inviting me to your show again.
Well, listen, every time we have you on the air, we get a ton of emails, and I know that you have a THC based treatment for agitation and Alzheimer's. Why don't you explain the agitation and Alzheimer's first, and then let's talk about the treatment.
Well, Alzheimer's, as you know, is a neurodegenerative disease. It starts about 20 years before symptoms set in. So in your late 40s, you can actually start getting amyloid buildup in the brain. And eventually, about 20 years later, in your 60s or 60, in late 60s or 70s, you start to get memory loss. And with that, you end up getting a lot of neuropsychiatric symptoms. Agitation is one of the worst ones because it makes it very difficult for the caregiver to take care of the patient. And agitation can be anything from physical aggression, it can be verbal aggression, it can be pacing, it can be disrobing, it can be inappropriate behavior, even motor movements, opening and closing a drawer, for example. So all of these are considered symptoms of agitation. And it makes it, as I said, it makes it very difficult for caretakers to actually take care of the patient. And currently, the only medication that's out there takes about 6 to 10 weeks to actually make a difference or to slow down or make the patient more manageable. So that's what agitation is, Sully.
So let's talk about the treatment then, because what's interesting here is you're the only THC-based treatment under investigation with FDA trials. I think that's important to talk about.
So we are the only THC-based under an FDA-approved trial. We're in a phase 2 trial, as I've said before. And the THC is interesting because THC tends to be biphasic. In other words, at high doses, THC behaves in a certain way. We all know people get high and from smoking weed and all that. But at very, very low doses, it behaves in the opposite. It actually increases neurotransmission. It helps with rebalancing neurotransmitters. It reduces neuroinflammation. All of these are related to agitation. So what we did was to take this medication along with another medication. So we have 2 active pharmaceuticals. THC is one of them. And we took that into a trial, and we discovered that it's fairly rapidly acting. So our interim results actually show us that within 2 weeks we can reduce symptomatic or symptomological agitation. Now remember, this is not agitation as in something happens, someone gets agitated. This is chronic agitation. It's caused by a change in the brain chemistry. So it reduces neuroinflammation. It also rebalances neurotransmitters. So that is why we're able to reduce agitation. And it's a very exciting drug because what we also found in preclinical trials is that it actually can be disease modifying. In other words, it reduces beta amyloid load in the brain. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going through this agitation study. We're also going to file eventually what we'll do is file another protocol to actually see if this reduces if it reduces some of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's, like tangles, and plaques.
So, Ram, you mentioned the current treatment takes about 6 to 7 weeks, I think you said, and then you said this one takes about 2 weeks. So is it something that upon diagnosis of Alzheimer's, then a patient would start taking it right away? Or is it when they first show the agitation? Or now you're saying that maybe it can reduce side effects or the symptoms, all the symptoms of Alzheimer's?
It's a great question. So right now we're testing it for agitation. So you wouldn't take it until symptoms of agitation, until you actually get the symptoms of agitation. But eventually we're going to test it to see if it actually reduces amyloid load and tangles, which are hallmarks of the disease itself. So eventually we're going to test this to see if it's disease modifying. Now, as I'm sure you know, disease modifying, showing that something is disease modifying takes a much longer time. Mm-hmm. So it take us, several years to do the study, to look at PET scans, for example, to look at if there are any other adverse events from reducing beta amyloid load, all of that. But that's exciting because this could be a drug that could be taken as soon as you see symptoms or signs of Alzheimer's.
Hey, Ram, what's the arc of the story with the FDA? What's the timing on that?
So right now we're in a phase 2 study. We are hoping, we've shown them the interim results, and we're going to have a discussion with them to see if we can pivot to a phase 3 trial. And that's a discussion that we're going to have with them in the next several months. And if we can pivot to a phase 3, it's going to speed things up.
Is there an AI component to this that we talked about before?
There's a massive AI component to this. We've already developed models. We've collected lots of databases from around the world. We are creating a model for Alzheimer's. And the hope is that when we create this model, we'll be able to look for early markers of Alzheimer's.
And the AI helps us with that.
And the AI helps us with that. Currently, 30% of diagnoses are false negatives. So if someone walks in, they have Alzheimer's, doctor says you don't have Alzheimer's, and the patient goes.
Ram Makunda, CEO, founder of IGC Pharma. You can go check them out at igcpharma.com, or they're publicly traded on the stock symbol IGC. I'm already agitated, and most of the things he described already happen to me on a daily basis. All right, we got Howie Font coming up. Our entrepreneur, a.k.a. Crash, is going to talk about consumers traveling at a record high, even with high inflation. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. Big Biz Show, stand by.
Loft 100 Studios, The Big Biz Show, our affiliates, and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any persons, or that investment in such securities would be profitable in general.
Given the nature of our company's profile and the lack of an active trading market for their securities, and investing is highly speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We profile selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
3, 2, 1. From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stock if we are speaking about, interviewing, or covering a public company who has paid compensation.
Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by contacting producer at sullyandgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We encourage our investors to invest carefully. Duh.
And read the investor information available on the website.
On the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, at www.sec.gov.
Or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at www.finra.org.
BigBizShow.com is our website. Great to have you along today, nationwide, coast to coast. A special thanks to our listeners, yes, for simulcast on radio, on American Forces Network, 175 countries and all the ships at sea. Great to have you along today. God bless our military men and women serving our country overseas and underway. Good to see you today. Let's bring up Howie Font out of New York City, our entrepreneur, otherwise known as Crash. Straight from New York. Hey, Howie, we didn't get to talk about the other day. We didn't get to talk about CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
Did you guys? Did you hear about this CrowdStrike thing?
Yes.
CrowdStrike, cybersecurity company, that somehow affected Windows, that shut down everything from financial institutions to airlines to hospitals.
Yeah.
Across
That's
the country.
serious. Yeah.
Had that happened in the middle of a trading day, which I sort of think we missed it by that much, would it have affected financial markets, do you think?
Oh, of course. Systems would have shut down and the market would have been frozen.
So we basically just got lucky on that?
That almost happened. Europe was fine. They used a slightly different system. So it didn't affect their market. And then I think they announced maybe 30 minutes before that the NASDAQ and the NYSE were going to be okay.
Okay, so Wiz is a cloud-based cybersecurity company. And they were going to do a deal with Google that was going to be worth something like $23 billion, and the whole thing blew up. Is that because of the CrowdStrike deal? Is there some, or is this just a?
You have to reasonably think that it has a lot to do with it. It highlights how important the space is and how monopoly is not the right word, but how dominant CrowdStrike is, and we shouldn't be giving one company the keys to the kingdom in this kind of way. And so Wiz was going to be Google's largest ever acquisition at $23 billion, like you said. And they've now elected and said, no, actually, we think the public markets are going to value us even more, which I'm using as a metric to just say, wow, the market is really, really robust. And we only see this kind of big IPO, big new stock coming on the market during times when the market is booming, like the SPACs in 2020.
Well, so it brings to mind what's going on with airlines, because airlines right now are unfettered. I think there's 418,000 flights scheduled between the U.S. and Europe between April and October of this year.
Wow.
I mean, it's a record amount. That's 7% higher than last year, Howie. I mean, we don't seem to be worried about travel until the day it happens, and we're fine the next day.
That's right. So the thing that's surprising there is we have noticed, I've been talking a lot about the difference between the biggest stocks in the economy and small stocks, and the difference between, how robust the market is versus Main Street and how people are really doing. But it seems like there's plenty of cash to travel. I mean, debt is going up to pre-pandemic levels, but it's because people are spending it and they're going on vacation.
Well, we had a strong dollar too. I mean, that's a big piece of this. And that's why we care about a devalued dollar or a strong dollar, is because it affects us in other areas. Talk about the number of transatlantic routes, because this was a worldwide problem that happened the other day. And I mean, I don't know if there was any open air indicators, but we were at the opening day of the races here in San Diego at the Del Mar racetrack. And that's usually a giant, I mean, it's an economic impact the size of a Super Bowl every year. And I'll tell you, until about 3 hours in, there was nobody there. And then suddenly, and it was because people missed flights. I mean, it's an international sort of an event.
Oh, right.
So talk about the transatlantic stuff, because it's impacting even towns like San Diego.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you've noticed the increase in traffic. I mean, the TSA says that 3 million people a day are going through their checkpoints, which is a record number. And then we have a record number of routes transatlantically between all the airlines going back and forth. So, yeah, I mean, when you have a strong dollar, people are going to want to maximize those. I've heard a lot of the same thing about going to Asia, to Japan and Korea, because the dollar is much stronger there, or the yen has weakened so much that.
But don't we have high inflation? Why are we traveling with high inflation? I thought high inflation quelled travel. Are we just ignoring it like the stock market?
That's why I brought it up today. I wanted to talk about it. It's a very interesting tidbit that people are spending. I think it speaks to the fact that we are the least dirty shirt in the hamper, as you say. Yeah.
Are you traveling at all?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm going to be starting to travel a lot because Lexi just got a gig, let's say. So I'm going to be traveling almost every weekend in the fall and the winter.
Are you worried about it? Are you worried about
a little bit? Yeah, I thought, because normally we go to places where the climate's okay, but now I'm thinking in the winter.
I'm always worried about getting back.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yep.
And getting back in time for the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for me, it's a concern, because when this stuff happens, I remember, I think it was last year. In fact, I was with you, Howie. I was in New York, and I was trying to get back, and for some reason, there was a weather delay, and I was staying on the Lower West Side of New York, and I was leaving from Newark because it was closer airport, right across the bridge in New Jersey. And I mean, it went from being your flight's delayed to now it's delayed 4 hours. Now I'm scrambling from one airline to another trying to get a flight out of here. It just turns out you got people, when you start seeing people laying down on the floor,
right?
It's time to leave the airport.
And then all the rental cars are gone because people are trying to rent a car and go to a new city where they can get a flight.
Hey, Howie, we talked about inflation last time. Before we let you out of here, we talked about inflation getting down to the threes again. The Fed Reserve is directed to keep the inflation in the twos, keep maximum employment, and keep prices stable. We're getting close to that. But what's the real inflation? Because if you look at the consumer price index, it excludes gas and groceries, which because they're volatile. But who gives a crap about anything other than gas and groceries?
What's the rest?
So what is the true inflation level at this point in your mind? Is it more closer to 8, like some of the pundits say, or is it really the 3.1 that the Fed's suggesting?
Well, you're exactly right. It completely depends on what market you're talking about, what product you're talking about with the level of inflation. I think the best way to look at it, because it's been so prominent in our lives, is to take the cumulative inflation over the last, say, post-COVID period. And if you do that, the dollar's been devalued by, 25%-ish, about 25%. It's really high. And that's what people feel. That's why year after year, month on month, inflation rising is just so terrible, because one bad month at 4% or something like that, okay, we'll get past it. But the cumulative effect has been,
Yeah, but the data we just talked about, or the things we just talked about in the travel, it suggests things are better than the data suggests. I mean, it's such a weird story. I mean, you know what? Here's what I think it is, and I told this to you guys the other day. I think it's because a year and a half ago we were about $3.50 gas, right?
Yep.
Now we're paying $5. We're used to it.
The new norm.
I mean, you're not going to stuff the genie back in the bottle.
Are people spending more on credit cards though now?
Of course they are.
It's like, what's our credit card
We're
rate?
back to pre-pandemic and debt levels, and we're back to pre-pandemic and savings account levels. I mean, we had more money in the bank. And the one thing that happened was, well, it's because the stimulus really helped us. No, it didn't. Every time you put that much money into the system, we should have had one stimulus. And the other part is buckle up, Buttercup. But we had 3 stimulus. What happens every time going back to 1940, you put money, that much money, it's called money flow, into the market. What happens is that we go to high inflation almost immediately thereafter. The bottom line is, stop giving us free money. You can't just give it to us. It affects the economy. Big Biz Show. Thank you so much, Howard. Talk to you soon. BigBizShow.com. It's a handsome young lad.
He is.
Oh,
the hair gets better and better.
Smartest guy in the room.
Yep.
And his smile. He's got such white teeth.
Oh, and his hair. We could go on for days.
All right. We're going to talk about that CrowdStrike event coming up here on the break. And a company from Israel that has created cybersecurity to prevent the very thing that just happened. Big Biz Show. Stand by. Show continues. Great to have you along today. Quick show. That could be Brian Jordan on the guitar.
Whoa.
From Lauryn Hill, Dave Matthews, and James Brown, and from Little Chris of the Nightcrawlers at the Mira Mesa Bowl this Saturday night. There you go. Good to see you guys. So we were talking about CrowdStrike on the last break, and of course, CrowdStrike, cybersecurity company that had a hitch in the giddy-up with some control in Microsoft Windows that affected everything from hospitals to airlines to very close to affecting the financial systems here. It begs to ask the question: is the global tech outage a glimpse into our future?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you remember, so we are broadcast nationwide, coast to coast, internationally. But here in San Diego, where our studios are, about 13 years ago, we had a power outage in San Diego that covered the entire county of San Diego. And it was from a glitch somewhere in Arizona.
I was going to say it was in Arizona. It was
right,
cold.
and it wasn't a cyber thing, but it made you think, God, we are one flip of a switch away.
Yeah, right. The grid.
Which scares us. So our good friend Jonathan Javid from Nazarovsky Pharmaceuticals, has quite a bit of experience in cybersecurity. He's well known to our viewers as a biotechnology expert, but he's also has spent much of his life in the information technology and cybersecurity world. He introduced us to a gentleman by the name of Gregory Nazarovsky. Gregory Nazarovsky is a co-founder of Fortress.io. It's an Israeli cybersecurity startup that in a few short years has amassed more than 300 corporate clients, and basically has created a system to sort of prevent what we just saw happen with CrowdStrike. And he joins us today. Gregory, thanks for taking the time to come out here, because this is a big deal as far as the story goes. I guess my first question is, how did you get into all this? You went to the Israeli army, like all 18-year-old Israelis. They send you to tech school and then to military. How did you get into the cybersecurity community?
So first of all, thank you for having me. So I actually started from childhood, disassembling and assembling computers at home. So I can say that my first computer had just one color, so it's a different time. And yes, as every kid here, when I was 19, I went to the Navy, actually finished in the Air Force. But back then we were learning information security from books. Myself, I have developed incident response procedures and forensics methodologies for the Army. And in Israel, Israel became a center, it's like a hub center for cybersecurity worldwide. Yes, sorry?
Here's my question is about, so in the military, weren't you a part of, or didn't you witness the first firewall that was invented for the Israeli army? I mean, that's 25 years of experience there. So talk about that a little bit.
So Israel is unique as a country that has a constant state of confrontation as an interest. So I think that we develop a coping mechanism which enables a rapid growth and develop of technologies, thinking decades ahead. in mind that we need to use them in the future. And one of the examples that you give, it's a really good example that I usually give as well. So the modern firewall, the first modern firewall, was developed in the Israeli army by people who recognized the risk. And it was back in 92, actually. And I think that it affects both the military and the private sector.
I gotta ask about CrowdStrike. So you have a company in Fortress there that really is intended to keep what happened from happening. First of all, can you describe exactly what happened, and should they have seen it coming? And was it a simple operator error, or was it just something that is a glimpse into our future that we may have to worry about going forward? Because this was an international issue.
So actually, CrowdStrike has an official statement today that anybody can go to their site. They're not keeping any secrets. It was, you can say a glitch, you can say a problem, you can say an issue. I think that it still needs to be investigated more, but they do try to do it as much public as they can. Usually those problems has like initial signs in form of information. So something happened along the way, but I'm guessing that this was caused the problem, that they didn't exactly heard the issue or got the alert at time. And those are one of the things that actually our platform at Fortress, we have developed a human-like analyst called Merlin AI, which is part of the platform. And Merlin combines an expert analyst intuition with consistency and speed and scale. We try to eliminate those kind of problems.
Well, let me interrupt for a second. Yeah. You do something that's called threat hunting. In other words, you actually identify threats like this before they happen, correct?
This is a more sophisticated threat, but yes, basically yes. And it can be like sorry. So those are things that can be done by malicious actors and by negligence. So our platform tries to detect both of them and be able to alert them as soon as possible.
Are you more concerned about negligence, or are you more concerned about malicious actors?
So negligence can give malicious actor the capability to attack an organization. So both of them, it's the same stakes.
How did you? So let's talk about your clients. And if I'm mistaken, you have 300 corporate clients. Your clients, were they affected by this CrowdStrike disaster? And if so, how quickly did you guys recognize what was going on?
So I cannot say that we weren't in the same boat as everybody. I can definitely say that we arrived at the safe shore quickly. So our customers was hit as well. Using the Fortress platform, we enabled us a quick recovery because we developed the capabilities those capabilities enable us a quick recovery. And once we understood the scope of and the gravity of the situation, we worked with our customers and CrowdStrike team, and we managed to deploy the workaround that we found together with the CrowdStrike using Fortress platform with remote management automation. In less than 4 hours, most of the customers were already up and running. So,
well, listen, Greg, I want to have you back. The bottom line is that this doesn't necessarily have to be a glimpse into our future, but if you can have a company like Fortress, and Fortress is not a paid advertiser. We just got Fortress from Jonathan Javid, but to able to threat hunt and to recognize it in advance and resolve it within 4 hours is a big deal. Gregory, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Gregory Nazarovsky,
thank you very much.
From Israel. Maybe we should just adopt everything. Send all our 18-year-olds to military.